She had the ability to read the minds of others, but not knowing how to keep her mouth shut will bring many problems to her life. Many students are on their way to school, but they all look down on a sad girl. She remembers her past. One day, a beautiful little girl was born. She was loved and adored by her parents. This little girl's name was Kotura. As she grew up, she began to hear the thoughts of the parents and began to mention them aloud. At first everything was quiet and did not matter much to the parents. While she was at school, she could hear the thoughts of her other classmates, starting some misunderstandings. As time went on, she could clearly see other people's thoughts. Kotura's friends started to hate her because she started to mention all the secrets, and the girls didn't like that and moved away from her. From that day on she stopped having friends. No one wanted them to read her mind. The same thing happened within the family. She kept reading their thoughts. One of those days, the father got tired of it and decided to stop going home. The mother was worried that her daughter had something wrong inside her head and started going to different doctors to help her daughter. All those doctors didn't want to help the poor girl, they thought it was all made up. With a father far away from the family and a woman who didn't know what to do to help her daughter, she started drinking alcohol. Little Kotura tries to motivate her mother not to feel bad, but the mother ends up yelling at her, blaming her daughter for everything that was happening to her. She went to live with her grandfather for a few days. The old man tells her that things will be fine, just be calm. After a few weeks, the family was finally reunited. It seemed that happiness was returning. Kotura is happy for a few minutes. Still an innocent little girl, she unwittingly reveals her parents' thoughts. It turns out that the father had a mistress. Hearing those words, the mother comes into conflict with the father. They start arguing about each other's infidelity. They get angry at their young daughter for making them argue. They were fed up and tired of dealing with a daughter. They decide to walk away from the daughter. The mother says she doesn't care about her daughter anymore and she is ready to leave. Kotura tries to persuade her mother to stay with her, but it is useless. The mother had already made up her mind. She pushes her daughter and gives her a horrible look. She regrets having a daughter. The torment does not end for Kotura. She was accused as a monster. Everyone tells her that her parents abandoned her. As she could read the minds of others, she could clearly hear everyone telling her that she was a monster. Her best friends told her that they would never speak to her again. Kotura tries to remind them that they used to be friends, but is brutally ignored. From that day on she tried to make friends, but no one wanted to hang out with her. The only thing she could do was to be alone. One day, while going to school, she met a kitten. She looked at it with affection. She knew that this little animal was alone like her. From that day on she fed it, but one day it disappeared. One of the neighbors approached her to scold her because she had been feeding that cat, informing her that she gave it to an animal shelter and that she would never come back to these parts. She dropped her umbrella and went into a trance. She was left for dead. The rage and anger she had been building up for years could not be contained. She screamed as loud as she could. From that day on, she decided never to have friends again. She decided to transfer to another school. Now she was starting a new life. As she was a new student, they all talk about her. She didn't like that, but one boy ignored her completely. As she could read minds, she can see how this boy was thinking nonsense and absurd things. This boy looks at her and asks who she is. What she doesn't know is that the sad thoughts she has will be broken by this boy. As she was a new girl, she attracts the attention of the other students, but as she is in a rebellious girl state, she talks in a very cold way to those girls. He is Manabe. He receives an invitation to go home together. This girl was interested in him, but since this boy was kind of dumb, he refuses the invitation because he thought they wanted to steal his special fighting techniques. Since this girl's family had a dojo. Inside his thoughts he says that he doesn't want to go to that place because they don't want them to steal his martial skills. Kotura hears that and tells him the truth, that this is not so. He just looks at him indifferently. During the following days, the other students were no longer interested in her, and everyone knew that she could read minds. Besides, Kotura was unfriendly. Manabe was a silly and friendly guy, so he decides to hang out with her. Kotura doesn't pay attention to what he says and does. This boy asks her if it was true that she could read minds. She says yes. Manabe asks her to be moderate in using that magic. She would have saved herself a lot of trouble if only she wouldn't say out loud what others think. Kotura tells her that it is none of her business, but this boy is very simple and eats a piece of Kotura's food for being unfriendly. For the next few days, Manabe wants to be friends with Kotura at all costs, but she doesn't want to. They even go home together. She asks him why he is so interested in being with her, but even Manabe didn't know why he was doing it. She reads this guy's thoughts, and it was true, he was just a fool. This boy wants to know the secret to being able to read minds. He thinks it will be interesting to have that ability. Kotura gets angry and leaves. Manabe knew nothing about his past and the problems that being able to read other people's minds causes. The next day, Manabe decides to go talk to her again, but Kotura is very angry with him and leaves without saying anything. Manabe, in his foolish capacity, has an idea. He imagines Kotura giving him a kiss. She could read those thoughts and comes back to stop him from thinking that. She tells him that she can't help but read other people's minds. She asks him to stay away if he doesn't want to be affected by it. Manabe says that he is always thinking perverted things and it would be a problem if someone reads his thoughts. Later she reflects, Manabe was a nice guy, but she can't help but remember her past, when she was humiliated because of her powers. The next day she was out shopping when she ran into Manabe. This girl had done the shopping. He offers to help, but she doesn't want to. In the end she agrees and they set out to go to Kotura's house. While they were walking, she senses that something is not right. She quickly pushes Manabe. They are saved from being run over by a truck. She thinks she is going to be scolded because she read the driver's thoughts. But instead she gets a thank you from Manabe. This boy accompanied Kotura home. He realizes that Kotura lives alone. She explains that she can't control her powers. That's why since she was little she had caused trouble to others. She always wanted to keep everyone away. She asks why he gets so close to her, as it will only bring her trouble. Manabe asks if that is what she wants. The only one who was hurt here was her. Manabe asks her to listen carefully. He explains that people move away because they want to and not because it is her fault. The best proof that she is wrong will be him. From now on he will be by her side to prove her theory wrong. Kotura can't help but cry after hearing those words. The two of them shake hands. From now on they will be together in the same mission to prove that Kotura is just a victim of society. The next day Kotura wakes up, prepares her breakfast. She leaves home ready to go to school. While walking she meets her classmate. He has his back turned. She tries her best to talk to her new friend. She, for the first time in a long time, is happy. These kids are making plans to spend time together, while everyone is watching. Manabe imagines Kotura in a perverted way. Some girls can't believe that the quiet girl is so talkative with Manabe. Along comes this girl named Moritani. She was in love with Manabe. She can't help but feel jealous. A girl from another class arrives looking for Kotura. This blue-haired girl says she has been looking for her for these days. This woman had heard that Kotura could read minds. She invites her to join the occult club. And without many more questions she takes Kotura away. Manabe can't believe his eyes and says that he too has superpowers. His power was to fantasize about Kotura. As they walk, Manabe remembers the promise he made, to never leave Kotura alone. They had arrived at the club. Although she did not want to be in that place, she was forced to enter. Entering the place they meet the members of the occult club. The only one who was inside was this short boy. Then these boys realize that they are being forced to be in this club. Kotura says that they can't be forced to be inside a club, but the blue-haired girl closes the door so that they don't run away. These two have no choice but to fill out the form and be part of this strange club. The blue-haired girl introduces herself as Yuriko. She explains that the club focuses on demonstrating people's psychic powers. Kotura says that she doesn't want to demonstrate anything to anyone, but Manabe is very excited to be in this club. She looks at him and decides to join. As Manabe had promised to stand by her, they go home together. For all the efforts this boy was making, she seems to be feeling something for Manabe. The next day, Moritani invites to go to lunch together, but is turned down again, because he had to go to his club. She can watch as the boy she likes leaves with the strange girl. The two boys had arrived at the club. They started talking about their psychic abilities and other things. While they were talking, Kotura can see a horrible thought that Yuriko had. She justifies herself that it was something from the past and apologizes to him. Later, Yuriko is very serious. She says that she is willing to prove that psychic abilities exist, for which it was necessary to be close to Kotura. The next day, Kotura is afraid to go to the club, but Manabe forces her to go. But because she did not want to go to the club, Yuriko can imagine why she does not want to come. Kotura had read her memory and saw something sad. Yuriko wants to get into confidence and tells him a little of her past so that he doesn't get scared. She had a mother who could predict the future. For many years, Yuriko's mother was helping the police with her clairvoyance, until one day people began to doubt the woman's powers and labeled her a con artist. The criticism was so hurtful that Yuriko's mother couldn't stand it and committed a terrible act. Yuriko was the first to see her mother in that state. Yuriko apologizes for showing that thought, telling her that it was unintentional. Having concluded with the misunderstanding, everything seems to be back to normal in this club and continue with their talks. Meanwhile, in a dojo, many students were wondering where Moritani is. She had run away from her karate practice. She remembers how she met the boy she liked. Manabe was a very nice boy who liked karate. Someone is approaching. Two people are walking. It was Manabe and Kotura. Kotura was very sad to know about Yuriko's past, and she started to cry when she knew the truth, while Manabe was comforting her. Seeing how the boy she likes is with someone else made her sad. A poor girl is being watched by horrible looks. People criticize her mother for being a swindler. The suffering she had was tormenting her. Suddenly, Yuriko wakes up. Everything was a nightmare. She had a goal. She wanted to prove that psychic powers exist. She could not allow people to deny her mother's powers. Today in the club activities, they will have to practice divination as part of the club activities, for which they will use Kotura's powers. As she had a bad reputation, she had to hide her appearance a bit. The other students received the predictions very well, and there are more and more students interested in this. But not everything is going to be happiness. They remember Moritani. She likes Manabe, because she realizes that this clairvoyant was neither more nor less than Kotura. She says that she will always be a freak for reading other people's minds and to realize once and for all that she is a monster. Not only she had those hateful thoughts, but also this girl's friends. Kotura could not tolerate so much hatred from these people. She ended up vomiting. The next day, she started getting bullied by these girls. Every day she was enduring all kinds of attacks on her. One day Manabe realizes that a hate paper was pasted on Kotura's back. The blue-haired girl informs him who the culprit is. This boy quickly goes to confront her. Manabe starts yelling at him for behaving like a bad person and starts an argument, defending from all the bad arguments Moritani had. Kotura is listening to all this. She was getting happy. Moritani asks him why he defends that skinny girl so much. Manabe tells him that Kotura was the girl he likes. Kotura cried with happiness when she heard that. Later, Manabe came back to the club. She is very embarrassed to be able to see his face. Yuriko apologizes since because of her club activities, she got into trouble. Kotura tells her that there is no problem, as she was just following the club activities. Besides, she wants to keep working on the upcoming activities. Things were better somehow. From that day on, classmates began to think that they were boyfriend and girlfriend. But this girl will not stay with her arms crossed. They will have their peaceful lives inside the club, they eat together, go to karaoke and many other activities. Kotura thanks him for staying with her all these weeks. Although it seems that they only did simple things, she was happy at this time. Manabe promises her that in the future there will be many more happy moments, let her have no doubt about that. She wanted to confess to him that she loves him too, but she hears that he has perverted thoughts about her and it passes. Meanwhile, Moritani is very angry with those two. She couldn't tolerate that the boy she likes is with that simple woman. She is full of hate, as she is part of a group of karate students. She has an idea. They as usual go back home. Kotura tells her that tomorrow he will bring her some food. This boy is very happy about that. In the distance, some men are waiting for this boy to be alone. Kotura's quiet life will soon change. The karate boys had confronted Manabe. Today they will beat him up. Moritani, a few days ago, she told these guys that someone was harassing her. She asked them to please give her a spanking, so that they won't bother her anymore. Obviously this is all a lie. The next day, Kotura had prepared food for Manabe. The master reports that Manabe is hospitalized and will not come for many days. Kotura uses her mind-reading skills and realizes that the real culprit was none other than Moritani. She doesn't think that a simple request from her would cause any person to be seriously hurt. She says that this was not what she wanted. She apologizes from the bottom of her heart. Kotura tells her not to worry, surely Manabe is fine, and leaves in search of his friend. Moritani realizes that all this time she had been misjudging Kotura. She is looking for Manabe to see how he is. Arriving at the hospital, she can see that this boy is hurt but not completely. She just looks at him from afar, to read his thoughts. She realizes that this boy had a complicated and difficult fight. She realizes that again, the people around her are suffering once more. The sad past of bad memories starts flooding her thoughts. She vowed that she would never make the people she cares about suffer again. She apologizes to Manabe inside her heart. She only asks them to forget about her. Since that day, Kotura stopped going to school and she had moved. No one knew where she was. Manabe felt guilty because he could not protect her. Manabe's daily life was as normal as ever. She even had other friends. Manabe can't believe that the other classmates behaved as if Kotura never existed. Despite calling on her cell phone, Kotura did not answer the calls. Yuriko meets with him, asks him why he is no longer going to the occult club. He replies that Kotura is gone, so he didn't need to go. Yuriko scolds him because he gave up too quickly. Manabe says that he tried to find her by all possible means to Kotura. He went to her house, asked teachers and even the police, but got no information. Worst of all, he didn't have a picture of her to look for her. The short boy tells him not to give up. There is always a better way to accomplish things. Manabe says she won't give up, and when he meets her she will give him his punishment. Yuriko also gets motivated and says that the whole occult club will look for Kotura. The short guy says he's a hacker able to see all the cameras in the city and knows where she was last caught on camera. What a great script! And so they magically knew where to look for Kotura. They went to a small town far away from the city. They arrived to this place with a fixed goal, to find Kotura. Manabe asks where they will stay to sleep. The others do not know, since they came very excited to find Kotura and did not think where to stay to sleep, and besides it was night. The security guard told them to go to a temple. With no other choice, they go to the temple to rest. A monk welcomes them and tells them they can stay the night. Yuriko was excited to be able to talk to this monk. She wanted paranormal stories or strange things that this monk has experienced. This man is very friendly and says he is willing to tell her about his stories. The monk tells the story of how a little girl with her mother had come here a few years ago. The mother thought her daughter had some mental flaw and asked for help. They arrived at the place where she could stay to sleep. Manabe was curious to know the story he told, when suddenly Yuriko can see a picture of Kotura and the monk. This monk tells that the poor girl had been left in this place by her mother. Every day she cried to see her mother again. Manabe is angry because he could not imagine how lonely Kotura was. Now more than ever he wants to find her. The monk says he understands them, but now it was night. Tomorrow morning they will go to visit Kotura's grandfather's house. The next day, Kotura thanked his grandfather for his help all this time. It was very early and they had finally arrived at a very big mansion. This place was unusual. Manabe realized that Kotura's family had a lot of money. Kotura's grandfather welcomes them all. This old man looks angry as he had heard something about Manabe from his granddaughter before. Manabe is explaining that she did nothing wrong, when suddenly Kotura arrives on the scene. These boys had come for her, so they chase her all over the mansion. She is ashamed and runs away everywhere. While she is hiding, she can hear Manabe's thoughts. She can feel the sad thoughts. Inside Manabe's heart, there was a great regret. He had promised to be with Kotura all the time. He just wanted to see Kotura again. Admitting that he is completely in love with her. All these thoughts Kotura could hear her. She also wanted to see him. Suddenly Manabe starts having perverted thoughts. Kotura doesn't feel like going back. In the end she is captured. Kotura apologizes for leaving without saying anything. She says she left so that she will never hurt anyone again. Manabe scolds him and explains that the things that happen to people will never be her fault. He explains that the best thing that ever happened to him was being together with her. He asks her to please come back to the city. The grandfather and the priest arrive next to them. This old man asks them to forgive his granddaughter, as she did not have many friends and she does not know how to deal with this. She says she doesn't want to go back, as she felt she hurt her friends too much. She asks them to please leave. She runs away. The other classmates look at Manabe and ask him to do what he has to do. He smiles and goes after Kotura. He stops her and explains that she doesn't need to suffer alone, as her friends will always be there for her. By the script, Moritani arrives. She apologizes for being a bad girl. She was not aware of everything she had done to Kotura in the past few days, and Manabe had been beaten because of her. Kotura reads her mind and realizes that this is true. She had come to this place because she knew that Manabe was sad about Kotura, and that is why she had come to ask him to return to school so that Manabe would be happy. She stabilizes herself emotionally. She explains that in these days, she realized many things. Moreover, she was able to change thanks to Kotura. Kotura was able to understand that people can change and will not always be angry with her. So she decides to go back with Manabe and all her friends from the occult club. That day she realized that she was still a child. That day she could understand that people can change, something so simple she didn't realize because of her immaturity. She was a coward, proud and capricious. Thanks to that she had turned her back on all her friends. But it was time to change all those things, for she would never be alone again.